and gentlemen, how's it going? I am back. It is me, SaltyTreecko, in the flesh. I'm still alive, that's right. I'm back after probably like a month or two, and probably like 3 or 4 months of not having like actual meaningful content. So anyway, I am back, and today I want to talk about the I don't even know how you pronounce it, the Hisui, is that how you pronounce it? But whatever the forms of Legends Arceus are, because as you know, Legends Arceus didn't have any actual competitive form of play, and it also introduced a lot of really cool mons and new forms. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and talk about these forms and talk about how good they would be if they ended up in the Gen 9 competitive formats, which whether or not this will actually happen, I really can't say for sure. All of these Pokemon could potentially just be stuck in Legends Arceus forever, and we'll never get to use them, which is unfortunate. But this is a bit of a I don't know what it's called. This shit might not happen, but this is just a fun little video talking about if these Pokemon did get in Gen 9, what would they look like, how good would they be, and yeah, just wanted to talk about that. So I have these sort of listed in order of how good I think they will be, and I'll start with Hisui and Avalugg. I really hope to God I'm not pronouncing Hisui wrong, because if it is, that'd be really embarrassing, and I'm going to keep doing it for the rest of the video. Hisui and Avalugg is really a pathetic mon. It has the exact same problems Avalugg does. It's really slow. It has an even shittier defensive typing somehow. I really don't know how you can manage to be worse than Mono Ice, but somehow Avalugg has found a way to do it. This Pokemon looks kind of interesting at first, because it has a very solid HP stat, respectable, not just respectable, it actually has a very good attack stat, and has a ridiculously fucking high defense stat. But then if we keep going, special attack doesn't really matter, so this could literally be 0 and no one would care. But then the bigger problems come with its special defense and its speed. Now, special defense is 36, which is absolutely pathetic. This mon is kind of sad at how weak its special defense is. It kind of makes it so that, yeah, it has a good, or a fantastic defense stat and has also great HP, but this Pokemon cannot take special hits for shit. Especially because it's also still weak to Stealth Rocks. This Pokemon is at 75% HP pretty much every time it comes on the field, and then it has pretty much pitiful, like paper-thin special defense, so this Pokemon can just get blown away by like any strong special attacker. And even though it's a rock type, Sandstorm can still not help this Pokemon be good, especially because it is like even like 216 special defense. Like that's still not like serviceable for what you'd want in a Pokemon. Also, this Pokemon still has no reliable recovery. I think it doesn't get recover anymore, which is really sad because this Pokemon can't even fulfill a defensive role. Now, if this Pokemon does get recover, it could potentially be somewhat useful if you run like heavy duty boots, and then they can have like a Stealth Rock like 2-attack recover set, which I still don't think will be good, because even then, if you get knocked off, you're still taking rocks, and you still don't have like any defensive utility except for just take neutral physical attacks decently well, which just isn't really what you need. So I figured the best use for this Pokemon would be just a Choice Bander. You get up Stealth Rocks, which having Stealth Rocks on a Choice Band Pokemon is kind of sad. Frost Breath is a filler move that I have in here because this Pokemon has a unique ice attack, which I believe is 100 base power and like 80 accuracy, which is really sad. That's just kind of pathetic. Although Legends Arceus moves are generally weaker than how they are in normal Pokemon, so I expect if this move does translate over, it will be a little bit stronger than just 100 base power, so that's something to look forward to, I guess. Stone Edge and then Ice Shard, because this Pokemon really just needs to take advantage of what it has, and what it has is a very respectable attack stat and a pretty decent combination of stabs, and it does have strong priority, which is good. So Avalugg, I really can't see it being useful at all, and that's like pretty much the only Pokemon on this list I can say that for, which is sad because Avalugg really deserved better. The next Pokemon I have on here is Hisui and Decidueye, and Decidueye is a bit of a weird case in this one because it's a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. And even saying jack of all trades is kind of misleading, because it's really the jester of all trades. I don't really know what to say, because all its stats are serviceable, but none of them are impressive at all. Like, 88 HP is, it's good. 112 attack is pretty solid, but we'll get to why I can't really use it later. 80 defense is not fantastic, but it's okay. 95 special attack is okay, but we'll also talk why I can't really use it later. 95 speed F is solid, and then 60 speed is not good. So, let's talk about why I have this specific set for it. Hisuian Decidueye does get spikes, which is pretty much the only unique thing it has. And then its unique move, which is triple arrows, which what it is it's a 50 base power move, which once again sounds weak, and even if it does get bumped up to 60, that's still going to be weak, but it does have the benefit of dropping the opponent's defenses, which I assume will, if it translates over, if it translates over, I'm assuming this will only be physical defense, because it's a physical move, and dropping both defenses just seems like something it wouldn't do. It also comes with the benefit of increasing your crit rate, but I don't think that will happen if it gets translated over as well. And then it also has Defog and Roost. I just wanted to kind of take advantage of what this mon does have, which is a solid special attack, or solid special defense and HP stat. It does have that 112 attack, but the problem is it really doesn't get any good physical moves. It has pretty much no serviceable fighting stab, and then it's relying on its grass stab, which physical grass stab, pretty much the only good thing it has is Leaf Blade, and even then it's still a physical grass attacking move, which not fantastic. So this Pokemon is really weak offensively. As far as we know, it won't get Sword Dance, so you'd have to use Bulk Up. So if you want to use this Pokemon offensively, I would recommend like a Bulk Up set with maybe Leaf Blade, triple arrows, because that's once again really the only fighting move we know that it gets right now. And then Bulk Up Roost, Leaf Blade. So I really don't see this Pokemon being too useful. It could run like a spec set with like Aura Sphere, like Leaf Storm, but 95 special attack really just isn't cutting it anymore. And I feel like this Pokemon is really, they tried to like combine Breloom and what's the one Pokemon's name? Chestnut. But the difference is Chestnut has really good defensive stats, it has spikes, it has Synthesis. It just doesn't match the defensive stats that Chestnut has. Chestnut also has the advantage of having Bulletproof, which this Pokemon does not have. Long Reach is okay because it means it's not taking Rocky Helmet or Iron Barbs or anything, which is definitely a good ability. Long Reach is a good ability, and it does benefit Decidueye, but Bulletproof is just probably better for a defensive Pokemon. And obviously it's nowhere near what Breloom is. It doesn't have nearly the attacking stats, doesn't have Technician, doesn't have Poison Heal, doesn't have Spore. Overall, I think this Pokemon is just really outclassed and doesn't have much of a future. And now we'll move on to Overqwil. Overqwil is another Pokemon that's kind of just disappointing. So what this Pokemon does have going for it is it has a really good defensive typing, and it has Intimidate. It does stand out from the other Dark and Poison types due to the fact that it does have Intimidate. And I actually changed the setup, my apologies. So what I originally had was Spikes, and then it has a unique move which has a higher chance to Poison, which I think I just slowed down for Barrage. So I can see this Pokemon filling a more defensive role, with like maybe a max speed, max HP sort of spike setter, as Qwilfish was. I was really excited when I saw Qwilfish was going to get an evolution and that it was going to be a Dark Poison type, and then I saw that it had practically like no increase to any of its stats, or at least no meaningful increase to any of its stats, and it just kind of disappointed me. So I really don't know necessarily what this Pokemon is going to be, because it could run like a Sword Dance offensive set. We don't know if it's going to get knockoff yet, so it very well might not. I feel like as a Sword Dance cleaner, it's just outclassed by the other Dark and Poison types like Drapion. I can't imagine it being a Swift Swim sweeper because it doesn't have the it doesn't have Water Stab, so it's just not as powerful in the rain as other Swift Swim sweepers. So I really think the only use this Pokemon could potentially have is just as a Spike Setter, which just tries to status and poison the opponent. Moving on, we have Hisuian Electrode, and Electrode is a bit of an interesting case. I'm not really sure how this Pokemon is going to end up, because this Pokemon is really unique in the fact that it's one of the very few electric types that can actually shit on ground types with Grass Stab. Now, of course, there's Landorus Therian, which is neutral to grass. I forgot what the word neutral meant for a second, apologies. So what Electrode can do is it can use its speed to be a very strong pivoter and cleaner. Stab, Thunderbolt combined with Energy Ball is very good, because obviously one of Electric's only real weaknesses is that a lot of Electric types get really stuffed by ground types, and Electrode having a secondary stab that can put the hurt on ground types is really beneficial for it. I also have Steel Beam here because I believe the move is called like it's called Chlora Blast, I believe, which is a really hilarious name for a move, and I love it. Which is, it's a grass type Steel Beam, so it's very strong and it cuts your HP in half. So what I can see this Pokemon being is just, like I said, a revenge cleaner, something to come in and pivot out. Now we don't actually know if this Pokemon is going to get Volt Switch or not, but I'm assuming because it's an Electrode, it will get Volt Switch if it comes to regular Pokemon. If it doesn't, this Pokemon is in for quite a bit of trouble. But the aim of this Pokemon is to come in, outspeed something after it's been weakened, and then just fire off a Thunderbolt or Energy Ball to kill it, or Volt Switch out into another teammate to keep up offensive momentum. The only problem with this Pokemon is that 80 special attack is really not fantastic anymore, and it really never was in the first place. So Choice Specs does help patch up its weakness a little bit, but overall this Pokemon doesn't really need too much special attack because its goal is just to come in and clean. And its speed is really nice. There are very few Pokemon which are able to outspeed Electrode. So I think this Pokemon could potentially have some promise. I'm not sure how well it'll do though. I feel like there are Pokemon that just have overall better stats in it. It also really just doesn't have any useful defensive attributes. It's neutral to ground, which is good, I guess. The main draw for this Pokemon is it's an Electric type that doesn't get completely blanked by ground types, which is honestly a very unique role. And I can honestly kind of see this Pokemon having niches on some teams in the higher tiers. Overall though, I still think it'll be a lower tier Pokemon, but I think it could definitely be used in the higher tiers, so if you're a big Electrode fan, that's good news for you. Moving on, we're going to Arcanine, which is also known as the Disappointment Dog. This Pokemon could have been so cool, but man, okay. So what I have for this Pokemon is I just have a Choice Band set with Flare Blitz, Wild Charge, Stone Edge, and Play Rough. And it has Intimidate too, because I feel like, while Flash Fire is a cool ability, I feel like it already quad resists fire, and I feel like Intimidate just helps give it more defensive utility. And I feel like Justified is okay, but I feel like Intimidate just helps it bring more to the table defensively, and not just as an offensive Pokemon. So, this Pokemon has a very unique typing, and it's not necessarily a fantastic typing, but it's definitely unique. Offensively, it's pretty solid, and its main goal is to fire off Flare Blitzes and Stone Edge, which are admittedly pretty hard to resist, and then it also has a good coverage move in Wild Charge in the back to hit bulky water types, which causes a lot of trouble. And then I have Play Rough in the final slot because this Pokemon doesn't learn Extreme Speed yet. It could learn Extreme Speed, and I think if it does learn it, it would definitely use it over Play Rough, at least depending on how the meta shakes out to be. If Dragon types are being really dominant, maybe you want to run Play Rough on it, so who the hell knows. I just have it being a fast offensive attacker, but imagine what this Pokemon could have been if they just gave this damn Pokemon Rock Head and they gave it Head Smash. Think about how cool this Pokemon could have been if it was firing off no drawback Flare Blitz. Flare Blitz is 120 base power, 100% accurate moves that has no drawback at all, plus the 10% chance to burn. Wild Charge, no recoil, which honestly I think Wild Charge is a really shitty move with how much recoil it does anyway. Wild Charge is a move that really needs to be changed. No drawback Head Smashes, and then having Extreme Speed in the back. This Pokemon could have been so cool, but just makes me sad. Just such wasted potential. Why did you have to do this to my boy, Game Freak? This Pokemon could have been so cool, but no. Anyway, moving on to Typhlosion before I get more upset. Typhlosion is a very unique Pokemon. Even though there are already several Ghost Fire types, I feel like Typhlosion does have... It has reasons you would want to use them over the other Pokemon. There are a lot of good Ghost types and there are a lot of good Fire types, and this Pokemon is very comparable to Chandelure. What this Pokemon has over Chandelure, even though it's a little bit weaker on special attack, what it has is 95 base speed, which is significantly better than Chandelure. It makes this Pokemon a little bit better than offense. Plus, this Pokemon does have the potential to learn Eruption, which the combination of Eruption and Shadow Ball those are two of the hardest moves to switch into in the game. So this Pokemon could definitely be a menace if it learns Eruption, even if it does only get Flamethrower and Overheat as options for Fire Stab. I still think it could potentially be very good, and definitely very hard to switch into. I have Hex in the last slot because I'm just really not sure what else to put in there. I guess if you want to hit Hex, you can run Extra Sensory. If it does learn that. I don't think it does yet, which is why I didn't put it on there, but regular Typhlosion does learn it, so it is an option. Could run Solar Beam as well if you're running it in the sun. So I think this Pokemon does have potential, but we'll just kind of have to see how it shakes up, if it learns Eruption or not, and just what the meta, if the meta is friendly to it, because right now things like Blacephalon and Dragapult are very strong, and this Pokemon does get shit on both of them and are generally just kind of weaker versions of them. So I think the draw of this Pokemon is it's a Chandelure, which is faster, and it's also stronger than Dragapult. So it's like a middle ground. It's not as fast as Dragapult, but it's faster than Chandelure, and it's not as strong as Chandelure, but it's stronger than Dragapult. So I think depending on how the meta works out, this Pokemon could definitely be very useful. And moving on, we have Samurott. Now Samurott this Pokemon is so cool, and I'm very glad that they finally gave it the Dark type that it pretty much should have had the entire time. So you might be looking at this Pokemon and be like, oh, it's another Water Dark type Pokemon. We've already seen Pokemon like Crawdaunt come in, and we've seen Pokemon like Sharpedo come in, and you might sort of ask yourself, like, how does Samurott differentiate it from itself? Like the set I have right now, this is pretty much just exactly what a Crawdaunt would run normally. And so the thing with this Pokemon is it has two things that, or it has something that Crawdaunt could never really ask for, and it has something that Sharpedo could never really ask for. In terms of Crawdaunt, it has base 85 speed, which is significantly higher than Crawdaunt's, I think, 55, I want to say. So this Pokemon is significantly better against offense, even though it doesn't have adaptability, and I think its attack stat is just lower in general. Just being so much faster is just such a benefit to Samurott. And as far as Sharpedo goes, what this Pokemon also has is Swords Dance, which is something Sharpedo could never, ever ask for because it would be broken as shit otherwise. So what I have here is just a Swords Dance boosting set with Liquidation, which it doesn't learn yet, but if it doesn't end up learning it, it still has Aqua Tail, so I guess that's fine. Knockoff, which it doesn't learn yet as well, so I guess it could run Night Slash, but regular Samurott learns Knockoff, so I kind of assume if it comes over it will be getting it. And then I have Aqua Jet in the back, just because I feel like it'll be nice. Nice combined with Torrent, and then I have Mystic Water as the item, so that you're not taking Life Orb Recoil and you're powering up your water moves at the same time. So I think this Pokemon could be potentially very good even in OU, just because it fulfills a similar role as Crawdaunt, but significantly faster, and it definitely has way more bulk than Sharpedo, and it has the option of running Swords Dance. So I think this Pokemon could be very useful, potentially even in OU. We'll just have to see. Let me a minute to drink from my water because my throat is already dry. Guess what? I'm not editing that out because I'm lazy. Next we have Lilligant, and Lilligant is a Pokemon where I have no idea how good this Pokemon will be or where it will fall into the meta. So Lilligant's an interesting Pokemon because it gets a move called Victory Dance, which in Legends Arceus what it does is it increases your attacking stat, and I believe it just powers up your moves. So what people are speculating is if this Pokemon comes to the mainline games in Gen 9, that was a super voice crack, I apologize for that. People are expecting it will be a physical version of Quiver Dance, so instead of Quiver Dance raising your special attack, special defense, and speed, it'll raise your speed, attack, and defense, which could potentially be very insane, especially considering this Pokemon has Hustle, which is fucking insane, dude. I cannot imagine a Pokemon having a physical Quiver Dance and Hustle. Like, that idea in my head is just kind of ridiculous. Especially because it does learn Close Combat, and it does learn a Leaf Blade as well, so we know this Pokemon is going to have good stab moves on both stabs. Now, Grass and Fighting is not the most fantastic type offensively, but I feel like a good thing for this Pokemon is with Quiver Dance and Hustle, it has so much power it doesn't really need to run a boosting item, so I think it can kind of afford to run Wide Lens to make up for Hustle's accuracy, and this also has the benefit of making Sleep Powder more accurate. So like I mentioned before that Hisui and the fucking bird guy, I don't even remember his name, it doesn't have Spore, it doesn't have a boosting move, it doesn't have a great ability. What this Pokemon has is it has Spore, it has a boosting move, and it has a great ability, and it's really fucking strong. So I think depending on how Victory Dance would get converted over, I feel like this Pokemon could be very, very, very dangerous, and potentially one of the best sweepers in OU. But it all just kind of depends on what this Pokemon ends up being with Victory Dance, because if Victory Dance is just a bulk up, like, okay, who cares? And then Hustle is a notoriously unreliable ability to have, so this Pokemon could be very hit or miss, or it could be potentially very strong, or it could potentially be not great at all, so this is a Pokemon we'll have to see. Definitely keep an eye on Lilligant, because this is a fucking threat of a Pokemon. Next up we have Zoroark, and you might be surprised that Zoroark is so high on the list considering regular Zoroark hasn't proven to be too fantastic. I think the difference between this Zoroark and the other Zoroark is its typing, and even though Normal Ghost might not be it might not have the greatest like amount of things that hit super effectively, it has fantastic coverage. I think there are going to be very limited amount of Pokemon that are going to be able to switch in on this and take resisted damage. And also its defensive typing is very good, which might be shocking that I'm talking about defenses on a Pokemon that has 50, 55, 60, 60 defenses. But the thing is, this Pokemon has 3 immunities. So, given the fact that this Pokemon can transform, or it can pretend to be another Pokemon, it can use its Ghost immunity, Fighting immunity, and Normal immunity, which are all good. Those are all very good immunities to have, maybe not so much Normal, but Normal is still a useful immunity to have too. This Pokemon could switch in on something, and then there are 3 types you just can't click a move against it. And even then, you're still questioning whether or not, like, that Pokemon is the real Pokemon or if it's Zoroark, and it's hard to risk the Pokemon not being Zoroark, because then there's just so much mindfuck that happens, even more than normal Zoroark, because with normal Zoroark, even if you think it might be a Zoroark, you can still just click a move against it to see, and because it's so weak and it doesn't have a good defensive typing, it will take like 50% HP, like minimum, and then you can revenge kill it the next turn. This Pokemon, you really have to be careful and think about whether it's a Zoroark or not, just because its defensive typing is so cool and so unique. So what I have right here is I just have a Nasty Plot set with Shadow Ball, Flame, and Sludge. Obviously Shadow Ball is a ridiculously spammable move. Everyone familiar with competitive Gen 8 should know this very well due to Dragapult and Blaze. Also even earlier in the tier, Gengar and Aegislash. It also has Sludge Bomb to hit fairies and Flamethrower to hit steels. So I feel like this Pokemon could genuinely be very useful if it came into a metagame. Just because it's very strong, it's very fast, it gets the jump on a lot of Pokemon. It can punish the opponent really hard if they try to over-predict or under-predict and just predict wrong in general. This Pokemon can really put the hurt on an opponent. I think another set it could potentially run is Scarf, if you want to really play even more off the idea of just getting the jump on the opponent and tricking them. I don't actually know if this Pokemon Arts Trick, but you could just run Hyper Voice in the slot. If it does get Trick, you could run Trick on this, or Switcheroo, or whatever it would get. Twick. Just pretend that's Trick, I'm not typing it. But you can see that this Pokemon genuinely could be a threat in a metagame, just due to the difference in its typing. And next, we're moving on to a Pokemon I did not expect to be as good as I thought it would be. But holy shit, this Pokemon getting fucking Sheer Force is absolutely ridiculous. And you might not understand why, because you're like, dude, Treecko, this is a fucking base 65 speed Pokemon that's weak to Stealth Rocks and doesn't have fantastic defenses. And now I'm gonna tell you something about this is a Pokemon called Nidoking, okay? Nidoking is known for being ridiculously strong due to having Sheer Force and Life Orb. And it has base 85 special attack. This Pokemon has base 112 special attack, as well as still having Sheer Force and Life Orb. This Pokemon is as fucking strong as Landorus Incarnate. And it has Dual Step. I think you understand why this Pokemon is extremely dangerous now, even with being like a slower Pokemon and having Stealth Rocks. So this Pokemon, the problem with it is that it's not good against offense, but this Pokemon against balance and defense will absolutely tear through both of those team styles. So if you notice that balance or defense is becoming too good, you just remember that you have a base 112 Life Orb Sheer Force Pokemon with Hurricane and Psychic just to spam. And if you don't want to run Hurricane, you have Air Slash too. And then you have Mystical Fire to hit Steel types. This Pokemon has the potential to be absolutely fucking ridiculous and broken and way too strong. It really depends on how the metagame lines up with terrestrializing. If offense turns out to be really good, then this Pokemon might not be as fantastic as I'm making it out to be. But if defense and balance are really good, this Pokemon will be a threat and it will be fantastic. Think about how strong Crawdaunt is, and think about having this Pokemon now, and having it have Psychic Hurricane, Sheer Force, Life Orb boosted, and then Mystical Fire in the back. Just to put this into perspective, Melmetal, if it's not AV, this shit gets easily 2-KO'd by Mystical Fire. Corviknight, if you're running Life Orb, even if it's like full Spadef, after Rocks, this Pokemon can fucking OHKO specially to full Spadef Corviknight with Mystical Fire. That shit is insane. Even AV Melmetal after Rocks, it is very close to getting 2-KO'd. So this Pokemon is not a fucking joke. This thing will shit on you. Genuinely, the only Pokemon I can see posing like a defensive threat to this Pokemon is Tyranitar, and even then we already know that this Pokemon gets Rock Smash. And thinking about this Pokemon running Rock Smash is really funny until we think about Spadef Tyranitar coming in and taking 40% from a Rock Smash, and then taking Stealth Rocks too, and then you're like, oh, okay, I see how this could be a threat then. And then regular Braviary can also run Superpower, which will, if you decide to run Mild instead of Modest, this shit will fucking OHKO T-Tar, like no sweat. I genuinely cannot stress enough. This Pokemon is genuinely the biggest threat to balance installed that might have been ever released in like the past 5 generations. And I genuinely mean that. This thing is potentially so dangerous. Anyway, moving on to Goodra. Goodra's a Pokemon I feel could be very, very, very powerful just due to the fact that it has Dragon Steel typing, and I really don't feel like I need to explain too much about how Dragon Steel typing is very ridiculously good. Honestly, in hindsight, I feel like I'm going to move this behind Braviary, just because I think Braviary can be 100% more powerful. The thing with this Pokemon is that over regular Goodra, it has a little bit less HP, but it has significantly boosted defense, and it has, I think, a bit higher attack? I'm not too sure. But the main draw to this Pokemon is it has Steel Dragon typing, it has ridiculously high special defense, it has good HP, and it has very good defense as well. So this Pokemon is kind of a defensive juggernaut. What I have here is just an Assault Vest set. I think this could potentially be the best set to run on this Pokemon. I think Overcoat's probably the best ability for it, just because it makes it immune to Hail, which I'm not sure how good Hail will be, and it's already immune to Sandstorm, but whatever. Makes it immune to things like Spore too, which is good, Sleep Powder. And what this Pokemon can do is it can come in on special attackers, take the hit very well due to Assault Vest and having these defensive stats, and then it can fire off a powerful either Dragon Pulse. This Pokemon gets a ton of coverage, but it gets Flash Cannon too. It gets Flamethrower, it gets Ice Beam. So this is a Pokemon that I think will always be able to good in the meta, or always be able to be good and powerful in the meta, because it has the coverage options where it can really mix and match its sets to to counter a specific amount of Pokemon, depending on how the meta ends up. So I feel like this is a Pokemon which, no matter how the meta ends up, it will be good, it will be usable. I feel like this Pokemon is comparable to Galarian Slowking, except for the fact that it obviously doesn't have Regenerator. If this Pokemon had Regenerator, I think it'd be instantly fucking banned. It's also worth noting that it resists Stealth Rock, which is very useful for a Pokemon that you want to be running Assault Vest on. Also, this Pokemon can run Specs if you want to, like normal Goodra can run Specs and that's fine, you can run Leftovers. There's a lot of mix and matching you can do with this Pokemon, and I feel like no matter how the meta ends up, you can tailor make this to be useful in pretty much any game you bring it into. Moving on to the second most powerful Pokemon, you've already gotten a spoiler as to what the first Pokemon is because it's up on the top. We have Ursaluna. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this Pokemon because I feel like it's been talked about plenty before. So yeah, the thing is, it has Flame Orb, Guts, Facade, and 140 base attack. And I feel like you've already understood why this Pokemon is ridiculously powerful. So, here's the thing, right? This Pokemon has ridiculously good stats. 130 base HP, 140 attack, 105 defense, 83 SPDF. You don't care about the special attack, and it has serviceable speed for destroying defensive Pokemon. Just really, what more could you ask for in a breaker Pokemon? I think this Pokemon could be one of, if not the strongest breaker Pokemon in the metagame. Definitely up there with Braviary as well. I feel like these Pokemon will compete a lot for a spot on the team, depending on how the meta ends up. So, you bring in Ursaluna, you get Guts activated, you click Facade, and something dies. It's really that simple. It also has all of the elemental punches. I have Ice Punch on here, but you really don't need it. I would honestly probably run Thunder Punch over it to hit Pokemon like Corviknight, and just flyers in general. The thing is, even after let's run a fun little calc here. After Intimidate, Landorus Searing gets 2-hit KO'd easily, and it can't KO it in return. And that's fully Fizdef Landorus. This Pokemon is so fucking strong, it's ridiculous. It also has Stab Earthquake for Toxapex. It has Thunder Punch for Pokemon like Tapu Fini and Bulky Waters, so they can't switch into it. They wouldn't be able to switch into it anyway because they still have 140 base attack fucking Guts Facades coming at it. Corviknight doesn't beat this Pokemon because it has Thunder Punch, which puts it to 50%, and then it can't roost on it because it'll get Thunder Punch and KO'd. It has Fire Punch for Ferrothorn, apologies. This Pokemon really is such a menace, and it's insane. Like, this is a ridiculously powerful Pokemon. And the only Pokemon I have over it is Sneasler. That's right, my choice for the #1 most powerful Hisui Pokemon is Sneasler. And the reason being, you thought fucking regular Weavile was strong? Imagine giving it 130 base attack instead. And Stab Close Combat. And Poison Jab to hit fairies. I think you understand the thing about this Pokemon too. And it doesn't even need to run Boots because it resists Stealth Rock, so you can run an offensive item. So you can run Life Orb, you can run... you can run any shit you want with this. You can run Choice Band and not be worried about having to have intense hazard control because hazards don't really matter to this Pokemon. You're going to run Life Orb and run SD. Just a fun little calc. Fully Fizdef, max defense, plus defense nature, so bold. If this Pokemon is Life Orb and gets up a Swords Dance, Close Combat fucking OHKOs it from full. Doesn't even need rocks. It's dead. Completely dead. From full. By this logic, also, Choice Band, Sneasler, Close Combat, will 2-shot Corviknight from full. That is so fucking insane. It's ridiculous. And really no Pokemon can wall this. Think about Clef too, because Clef, if it's unaware, and it switches into rocks, Life Orb, Poison Jab, it's dead. If it's running Magic Guard for rocks, if it goes for SD, you get Poison Jabbed out of your mind, you're dead. There is no counter to this Pokemon other than, like, if this Pokemon gets a Sword Stance up, you are going to have to sack a Pokemon. That's just how it is. And I have Aerialise here just because it doesn't have knockoff yet. Remember, this is a Pokemon that's getting derived from Sneasler, so there's a good chance it also gets knockoff to obliterate ghost types. And you think you're safe bringing in any Pokemon to resist its attacks? It also has Poison Touch, so you can just get fucking poisoned from any one of its attacks. Close combat with a 30% chance to poison any Pokemon you switch in against it. Like, I don't know what else there is to say. If you can't comprehend the sheer power of this Pokemon, I don't understand what will make you understand it. It's insane. It's genuinely insane. It also gets, if you really for some reason need priority, it gets quick attack too. I really don't know what more there is to say about this Pokemon. It comes in, it kills something, and then if you have something faster, you might have to get forced out. But really, that's it. This Pokemon, I can't imagine there being a game where it does not get at least one kill. Like, sure, it doesn't have, like, much defensive utility, but I think the sheer offense that this Pokemon brings to the table is definitely worth it in, like, every sense. So anyway, that is my list as far as the Hisui Pokemon from Legends Arceus, and how good they would be if they were put in Gen 9. Let me know your thoughts on these Pokemon, if you would change anything around, if you think Hisui and Avalugg deserve better. If you think I'm stupid for putting Decidueye this low, let me know in the comments below. Anything's appreciated. Make sure to smash that like button, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more content, and check the cards out anyway. Bye. Thank you.